Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the golden heat haze of ancient Persia, where the sun never seems to set and the wind, if it shows up at all, arrives like the breath of a dragon. You're standing at the edge of a city made entirely from sun-baked clay walls the color of cinnamon, domes rising like baked loaves, and towers shaped like chimney flutes. It's hot. No, really, it's for 5C, and the sun feels personal. Your clothes stick to you, your mouth's gone dry, and the air tastes like brick dust. You squint into the heat shimmer and wonder how anyone survived this. Spoiler: most didn't. Not without some serious architectural wizardry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from plus your local time. I love seeing how far this sleepy little history club has traveled. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. Together, you trudge through the baked alleys of an ancient city. Let's say we're in Yazd, though it could be any number of Persian desert settlements. The air is dry as chalk, and the buildings rise around you in oddly calming monotony. No neon signs, number air conditioners buzzing, no glass, just mud brick walls, every shade of golden brown, their surfaces soft with time. At first, it all looks the same, but once your eyes adjust, you notice the shapes: thick walls, narrow alleys, and tall towers with open mouths pointed at the sky. A donkey tied in the shade flaps its ears. Somewhere, a clay jar sweats slowly on a ledge. Persians didn't just endure this heat, they studied it, coaxed it, and outsmarted it. When other civilizations fought the climate, these folks leaned into it like a sleepy cat finding the sunniest patch on the floor. Their trick: not fighting the sun with fire, or blocking the heat with machines, but shaping the very air itself. 1,000 years before anyone in the West dreamed of green anything, ancient Persians were running entire cities cooled by wind and shadow. But tonight, you're not a historian, you're a wanderer, someone drifting through centuries of innovation, barefoot on warm clay floors, pausing in quiet courtyards where air somehow moves even when the world is still. You push open a heavy wooden door. It creaks like an old throat. Inside, silence, coolness, actual relief. The difference is instant. It's like walking into another season. Outside, June on Mercury. Inside, early spring in the shade. The room's ceiling curves gently, shaped like an upside-down bowl. High up, a slit of an opening lets light in, but not much. On one wall, there's a low, arched alcove. Your fingertips brush the wall. It's not cold, exactly, but definitely cooler than the air outside. The bricks feel ancient and sensible. This isn't magic, it's physics. Mud bricks, the good old-fashioned kind, made from riverbank clay, straw, and patience act like thermal batteries. During the day, they soak up heat like a camel drinks water, slowly, steadily, greedily. Then at night, when the desert chills faster than your iced tea sweats, they release it, warming the air just enough. It's passive, consistent, and best of all silent. That donkey outside probably understands this better than most people in your apartment complex. And here's your first oddity of the evening: the city's alleyways. They're intentionally crooked, not sloppy, designed to liberate. Wind flows better through curves. Straight streets turn into wind tunnels or worse, hot boxes, but curve the path, and you slow the air, shift the pressure, control the dance. Historians still argue whether these alleys were planned purely for climate defense, or both, but it's hard to ignore the cooling benefit when you're walking in shade at high noon and still not sweating. You pass under a tiny archway barely wide, enough for 2 people, and suddenly a waft of cooler air brushes your neck. You turn. Nothing there. No breeze. No fan. But the temperature just dropped by 1 degree or 2. Welcome to your first badger. The WINDCATCHE. It sounds poetic, right? It is. And also delightfully literal. A badger is a tall, vertical shaft rising above rooftops like a solemn flagless pole. Inside, carefully arranged vents catch even the faintest breeze, redirecting it downward into the rooms below. No moving parts, no electricity, just geometry and hope. Some versions have damp surfaces at the base to cool the air further through. Evaporation like blowing across a damp towel on a hot day. Instant dessert, eh? See. And if there's no breeze, well, that's where the mud brick walls, shaded courtyards, and smart building orientation pick up the slack. Persians didn't rely on one solution. They built entire systems of survival. It's like if your body naturally started misting sweat only when your blood reached 101 F weight. Actually, that's a thing. Nature's always been ahead of us. There's also an eerie stillness in these buildings, but it's not empty, it's restful. No fluorescent flicker, no refrigerator hum, just the soft shuffle of sand in corners and, once in a while, the sigh of air changing its mind. A lizard skitters across the threshold as you step into the next room. This one has a sunken floor, another clever trick. Hot air rises, cool air sinks, so why not live slightly below the heat line? You start to notice how rooms are arranged. The kitchen isn't the heart of the home, it's tucked. Far away, vented, often half outdoors, living areas face inward toward a shaded courtyard. Windows are small and high, designed not to stare out at the view, but to flirt with the breeze. All of it planned not for ego, but for endurance. Tonight, you're not marveling at palaces or kings. You're following bricklayers and roof planners, people who saw the sun every day and thought, fine, you do your thing, we'll do ours. And somehow, over centuries of sandstorms, invasions, and dynastic drama, these cooling systems, simple, beautiful, stubborn, just kept working. And now you're here, lying back on a woven mat, listening to your own breath, echo softly in a domed room that hasn't changed shape in 900 years. The wind catcher murmurs above you. Somewhere outside, a pot of rose water slowly evaporates. Perfuming the courtyard, the night settles in like a blanket folded once, then again. You blink slowly as your eyes adjust to the twilight inside this ancient mud brick home. The coolness continues to impress you, especially when you think of the absolute furnace. Just beyond these thick, earthen walls, there's no AC unit humming in the corner, no ducts rattling through plaster. Just clay, air, and cleverness. Let's talk about those walls. You place a hand against one again. Not cold, but cool in a stubborn, satisfying way. It's like touching the side of a shaded rock after hours in the sun. This isn't by accident. These walls are made of kesht, sun-dried mud bricks crafted from clay mixed with straw, water, and sometimes even goat hair if someone felt fancy that day. Poured into wooden molds and left to dry in the relentless sun. These bricks have been used for millennia in every corner of the Middle East. But here in Persia, they were fine-tuned into architectural instruments, each brick, in its humble, sandy way, is a little miracle of thermodynamics, thick enough to resist daytime heat, porous enough to breathe just slightly. When combined into walls often more than a meter thick, they create a kind of environmental buffer. You might not get cold, but you definitely won't bake. And when night falls, the stored heat leaks back out, gently warming the interior. It's like living inside a sponge that wrings itself out, based on the time of day. And yes, if you're wondering, people still build with these bricks today, because sometimes 2,500-year-old tech still works better than whatever your landlord installed last summer. As you shuffle across the stone floor, your fingers graze a decorative ridge in the wall, a detail most people wouldn't notice, but here in ancient Persia, form always followed function. That pretty raised border. It helps channel air from the wind catcher down the wall and around the room, creating a soft circular airflow. Function and feng shui. Not bad for 400 BCE. You walk through a low archway into another room, this one with a slightly vaulted ceiling, like the belly of a ship. It's dim, the only light coming from a small slit near the top of the wall. You crane your neck and catch a flicker of movement. Not a flame, not the sun, just dust, dancing in a lazy spiral as air moves ever so slightly through the space. Here's the thing: Persian architects didn't just build buildings, they built climates. The house you're standing in was designed to create microclimates within its own walls. Some rooms stayed cooler than others. Some faced north to catch the shadow. Others were built for morning light and evening shade. Materials were chosen not for style, but for their reaction to temperature, humidity, and airflow. Bricks, yes, but also stone, wood, plaster. Even pieces of broken pottery mixed into the mortar to increase thermal mass. And let's talk about straw. Ordinary, scratchy straw. Straw was the secret agent of the mud brick world. When mixed with clay and dried in the sun, it added strength and flexibility to the bricks, making them less likely to crack and crumble. Plus, it created tiny air pockets, natural insulators. Add enough of these microscopic gaps and suddenly, you've got a building that slows heat like a bouncer at the door. Historians still argue whether the precise ratio of straw to clay was standardized across the empire, or if each village developed its own secret mix. Some records suggest master brickmakers passed their recipes down, like sacred family lore, 1 part river clay to parts donkey patience. You duck into a small pantry, just a nook, really, but noticeably cooler. That's on purpose. These homes were designed so that cool air from the Callet tunnels, which we'll explore soon, could be funneled up through certain rooms. The result, a passive fridge. Bread stays fresh, dates stay chewy. Butter doesn't melt into a sad yellow puddle. And here's where things get weird. In some rural homes, people even buried clay jars filled with water or fruit down into floor level. Compartments that connected to these underground channels. The moisture and low temperatures kept perishables good for days, maybe even weeks. One traveler wrote that in some houses, water pulled from these storage jars was too cold and had to be warmed slightly before drinking. Imagine that, too cold. In a desert, outside, the wind picks up, brushing against the slatted top of a wind catcher. You can't see it from here, but you can hear it, a low, hollow murmur, like the desert humming a lullaby. It hits the slats, splits into streams, dives down into the shafts and disperses into these cool chambers. You wouldn't think wind could be sculpted like clay, but here, it's been mastered. By now, your body's relaxing. The warmth of the bricks, the rhythm of your own breathing, the soft tickle of movement in the air, all of it conspires to calm you. This wasn't just architecture, it was comfort engineering. These homes were sanctuaries, places where people didn't just hide from the heat, they lived well because of it. And here's something you wouldn't expect. The roofs were used. Flat, sturdy, and often accessed by narrow staircases. The roofs served as sleeping quarters during especially hot nights. Families would drag out thin mattresses, lay under the stars, and let the night wind wash over them. No mosquitoes up here, just stars, silence, and the faint scent of mud brick warming your back like a memory. It's strange to think that a house made of dirt and straw might be more comfortable than your average concrete apartment, but you're starting to believe it. It's all so deliberate, every detail rooted in survival, and yet nothing feels desperate. In fact, you feel kind of spoiled. And don't forget, the average Persian house wasn't just one home. It often included a courtyard, animal shelter, guest rooms, family chambers, storage spaces, even places for ceremonial events. All of it designed not just to function, but to breathe. These weren't fortresses. They were living organisms rising with the sun, exhaling at dusk. Somewhere behind you, a door thuds shut, not loud, just final. The wind shifts again, and you're reminded how much these buildings relied on cooperation with nature, with neighbors, with materials, and somehow it all just worked. You lean against the cool wall and close your eyes for a moment. The mud brick hums quietly against your skin, and it's only section 2. You open your eyes to a soft glow spilling in from the courtyard, no harsh glare, just the gentle reflection of early evening bouncing off sand-colored walls. You step back outside, and now you notice them clearly, those strange, tall, chimney-like towers rising above rooftops all around you. You crane your neck and squint. They're not chimneys. Of course, they're wind catchers, badgers, the pride of Persian passive cooling, and one of the cleverest architectural features to ever grace a desert skyline. The first thing you realize is how tall they are, often 5, 10, even 15 meters high. Not decorative, functional. These are heat-fighting machines disguised as architectural poetry. Each badger rises like a periscope, peering into the invisible world of breezes and air currents. Its job is simple: sniff the wind, snatch it, and send it plummeting downward through vertical shafts into the rooms below. You'd think a breeze couldn't be directed like that, but step beneath one and you'll believe in miracles. Some towers are open on just one side, built to face the dominant wind direction. Others are octagonal or even cross-shaped, able to catch wind from multiple angles like a weathered sailor reading the air with his face. And here's the genius: when there's no wind, the tower can still help. As the sun bakes the exterior walls, it heats the air inside the tower shaft. That hot air rises, creating a pressure difference that pulls cooler air up from the basement. Or can it tunnels below? No fan required, just sunlight, air pressure, and a little patience. It's like your house is breathing deep, slow desert breaths. Historians still argue whether these towers originated in Persia or were first developed in Egypt, and then refined here. What we know for certain is that by the 7th century CE, badgers were everywhere in Persian cities, from private homes to mosques to merchant houses, humming along quietly in the background, doing the work of 1,000 fans without burning a single drop of oil. You step inside one of these towers now and the change is instant. The air presses against you, gently cool, deliberate. You can't hear it, not really. It's more of a sensation than a sound. The shaft is lined with brick and sometimes even glazed tile to smooth the flow. At the base, the opening branches out to different rooms, distributing the air where it's needed. And unlike most modern AC systems that blast you in the face with cold, dry air, this feels natural, like standing in the shade near a riverbank. Some badgers were even built with wooden flaps that opened and closed depending on the season, catching wind in summer, blocking it in winter. It's low-tech meets high-level intuition. Nothing about this is accidental. And here's your quirky tidbit of the night: some badgers weren't just air handlers. They were status symbols. In cities like Yazd and Kashan, taller, more complex wind catchers were a sign of wealth and sophistication. Think of them as ancient desert skylines, part cooling tech, part neighborhood flex. You walk past one particularly ornate tower trimmed in pale blue tile, and you can practically hear the ancient homeowner whispering, "Yes, this breeze is imported." Now, let's take a moment to appreciate the materials. The mud bricks we admired earlier, perfect for absorbing and releasing heat, but also perfect for building the wind catchers themselves. Lightweight enough to rise high, dense enough to hold shape, and porous enough to regulate airflow naturally. Combined with clever internal dividers and sometimes water basins at the base, they created airflows that varied by room, time of day, and season. It's like having an HVAC system with a soul. You climb a narrow interior staircase, spiraling up the inside of one of these towers. Each step is worn from centuries of foot traffic technicians, cleaners, curious children. At the top, there's a simple grated opening, designed not to let in light or birds, but to guide air. You pause and look out across the city. It's a forest of wind catchers, some lean, some squat, some carved with geometric beauty. You spot taller ones in public buildings, smaller ones in modest homes. And yet, despite their variety, they all serve the same quiet purpose: to tame the heat. Not erase it, coexist with it. You feel a rush of wind against your cheek and smile. The tower caught it, and now, somewhere below, someone's sleeping easier because of it. You descend again, and as you do, you begin to notice how rooms are arranged differently in homes with badgers. Living areas are strategically placed to benefit from the airflow. Storage rooms are sealed off. Courtyards are positioned so that wind entering through the tower passes over moist surfaces, fountains, pools, even soaked fabrics to cool it. Further before it reaches the inner rooms, you pass through one such courtyard now. A trickle of water dances in a shallow pool, lined with blue tiles chipped by centuries of footsteps. Palm fronds rustle softly. You sit near the water's edge and close your eyes. The air brushes past, scented with wet stone and maybe, just maybe, rose petals. It feels designed for you, not because you're special, but because humans have always needed the same things: shade, air, a space to breathe. And the ancient Persians maybe, more than most, figured out how to give us those things with nothing but clay, wind, and time. Funny, isn't it? You live in a world of thermostats and filters and apps that turn your heating on from across the planet. But here, in this sun-baked city of silence, people mastered the art of climate control with zero electricity and no moving parts. And the kicker, it still works. You rise slowly and look up at the tower one more time. It doesn't do much. It doesn't light up. It doesn't beep. But it listens. It listens to the wind, to the sun, to the stillness, and tonight it listens to you. You walk slowly through another narrow alley, its walls rising all on either side like canyon cliffs. A single line of sky hovers above you, thin and pale blue, and you can feel the wind catchers doing their quiet work all around. But now it's time to look deeper, not just at where the air starts, but how it moves. Because the real magic isn't just catching the wind, it's what happens next. Imagine air moving through these ancient homes like guests at a polite dinner party. Never barging in, never storming through, just gliding, swirling, invited. And behind that elegance lies a principle so clever it feels modern: pressure differentials. You duck into a side room off the main courtyard, and there just above your head is a tiny arched opening. Not a window exactly, more like a vent, tucked high into the wall. It faces into a shaft that connects up toward the wind catcher. Warm air is rising through it slowly, like it's too sleepy to rush. And because of that rising motion, the room you're in is being gently refilled with cooler air pulled from lower parts of the house. You're inside a system, even if it doesn't look like one. Here's how it works. As the sun heats the exterior of a building, the air outside becomes lighter and rises inside the building. If the structure is shaded and cooler, the air is heavier and more stable. The difference in pressure inside versus out creates a gentle airflow. Hot air goes up and out through the badger or the high vents, and cooler air, drawn in from shaded courtyards or subterranean chambers, moves in to replace it. Voila! Passive cooling. But the best part? It never feels like air conditioning. You don't get slapped with a gust of artificial cold. No sudden blast that leaves you blinking or reaching for a sweater. Instead, it's like standing near the edge of a cave on a warm day and feeling the earth breathe on you. Historians still argue whether these systems were understood scientifically at the time, or if generations of builders simply observed what worked and handed down those principles by habit and tradition. Either way, the results were extraordinary. And here comes your quirky moment. Some homes actually redirected airflow using hanging fabrics and reed mats. Imagine walking into a room where the breeze is guided not by ductwork or a fan but by a curtain soaked in jasmine water. It cools the air and perfumes it. A climate system with aromatherapy built in. You pass one of those curtains now. It's suspended from a wooden frame near an open arch, and as you step close, the temperature drops just a touch. The fabric's damp, a faint. Sweet scent lingers in the air, something floral and sharp, maybe citrus. You breathe in and wonder why you ever accepted the smell of plastic and freon as normal. The Persians didn't build for just enough, they built for beauty and comfort. And sometimes, a little drama. Step back into the courtyard and notice how it's always one level below the house. Why? Cooler air sinks. By placing the courtyard slightly lower, it becomes a natural reservoir of cold. Airflow from the badger is directed through the courtyard before it reaches the rooms, giving it time to chill against water basins, tile, floors, or even just shaded earth. Some wealthy homes went even further, building small underground pools connected to canets. Those are coming soon, promise, allowing air to pass over cold water before flowing into living quarters. And if you're picturing that little spritz of water your grocery store uses to keep lettuce looking perky, yes, that, but powered by the earth. And here's something subtle you almost missed. The shape of the ceilings. You pause beneath a dome-shaped roof with a small vent at the top. This is no accident. The domed ceiling isn't just aesthetically pleasing. It's a heat trap. Hot air collects up there, while cooler, denser air stays near the ground where people actually live. In some homes, You'll even find low built-in platforms or seating benches that take advantage of this layering, keeping bodies closer to the cool zone. No thermostat, just physics. And mud. You wander now into a long hallway. One side has a series of small vents near the floor. The other side is smooth and blank. At first glance, it seems oddly asymmetrical, but when the wind flows in from one direction, it hits that blank wall, deflects, and spreads evenly across the space, preventing hot spots or stagnant corners. Architects weren't just thinking about materials, they were choreographing air itself. There's a kind of quiet joy in noticing these details, like realizing your house has been looking after you in secret. That vent you never noticed, that crack between stones, all part of the performance. You settle onto a clay bench that's cool to the touch. Above you, a ceiling fan slowly turns, not powered by electricity, but by the rising heat from below, driving convection upward. And it hits you. You've just spent the last half hour moving through spaces that were intentionally designed to feel good, and it's all powered by sunlight, shade, and structure. Even now, your skin feels calm, not clammy, not tight, just balanced. The way it does when you're in the perfect patch of shade on a warm day, sipping something cold and watching laundry flap on a distant line. And here's your little modern punchline. There are architects today, right now, designing new homes in California and Spain and India who are desperately trying to recreate what Persian builders did 1,000 years ago with no computers, no energy bills, and no carbon guilt. You lean back and feel the breeze shift direction. A bird whistles somewhere nearby, and the scent of baked clay mixes with the faintest trace of cool water. No machines, no wires, just good design and a little cooperation with the wind. The air moves, the world slows, and you're starting to feel it too, inside and out. You pause for a moment under the shadow of a fig tree, the leaves gently trembling in the breeze carried down by the ever-patient wind catchers. But tonight's journey wants to take you deeper, literally, because beneath your feet lies one of the greatest hidden wonders of Persian ingenuity, the canet. You crouch slightly, brushing your hand across the dry ground. The soil is hard, sun-bleached, but underneath, a whole world of water and coolness humming in the dark. You find the entrance to a tunnel, unassuming, low, framed in ancient brick. You duck your head and step into the sloping path that leads down. Instantly, the air changes. It becomes cooler, denser, like a cellar full of secrets. The brightness fades behind you, and you follow the tunnel by torchlight or instinct, one slow step at a time. This is a canet, or at least, your feet are in one of the countless tunnels that snake under Persian cities and farmlands. They're not sewers, they're not aqueducts, they're something better. Hand-dug channels that tap into underground water sources in distant mountains and carry the cool, clean water slowly, gently downhill through gravity alone. And here's the staggering part, these tunnels stretch for miles, sometimes dozens of miles. Some canets are so old that no one knows who dug them, and some are still in use after over 2,000 years. Let that sink in. No pumps, no pipes, just human grid, geometry, and the occasional goat cheering from the hillside. You keep walking deeper into the tunnel. The roof is low, you can't stand fully upright, and the floor is slightly damp, packed from centuries of footfall and water flow. Along the walls, the occasional niche or tool mark tells a story of the diggers, men who dug these tunnels with nothing more than pickaxes, baskets, and rope. Vertical shafts, spaced every 20 to 30 meters, were sunk from the surface to haul up dirt and send down men. These shafts also let in air, providing ventilation for workers and, more importantly, keeping the water fresh and oxygenated. One shaft opens above you, now a faint circle of sky far overhead, like a pale moon glimpsed from a well. A rope ladder clings to the wall, its rungs worn smooth. You pause, listening to the steady trickle of water ahead. The temperature here is easily 10 degrees cooler than it was up top. Maybe more. The air is clean, cool, damp, not humid, just fresh, as if the earth itself has been saving it for you. And that's the key. This isn't just a clever water delivery system. It's a natural cooling engine. because in many Persian homes, these canets weren't hidden away underground. They were integrated into the structure of the house. The water would be channeled beneath floors or through shallow, tiled basins. In the courtyard, as it flowed, the air above it cooled. That cooled air would then be pulled into rooms via wind catchers or pressure vents, lowering the indoor temperature in a subtle, consistent way. Imagine it, water flowing beneath your bedroom floor. Not noisy, not dangerous, just there. Working, cooling, existing. Historians still argue whether these underground systems were first used exclusively for agriculture and only later integrated into architecture, or whether they were dual purpose from the start. Either way, the results speak for themselves. Some entire cities like yours were built around canet networks. Street layouts, neighborhoods, even marketplaces were all shaped to align with the slope of the water. And here's your oddball moment. In some cities, there were canet inspectors, like ancient HVAC technicians with sandals and attitude. Their job, crawl through the tunnels regularly, make sure everything was clear, water was flowing, and no mischievous neighbor had tried to steal more than their share. Imagine waking up each day thinking, time to go wiggle through 5 kilometers of mud and whispering water, and somehow people lined up for the job. You reach a spot in the tunnel where the water collects in a small, hand-carved basin. You dip your fingers in. It's cool, clean, the kind of drink you imagine mountain spirits sipping. You lift your hand to your mouth, and the shock of the cold hits your teeth before your tongue. In some old homes, there would be a small spout inside the kitchen or courtyard fed directly from this source. It meant access to drinking water and a natural refrigerator. Some families stored perishables in clay jars half submerged in this flow, keeping milk and cheese fresh for days. A fridge without buzzing, just silence and water. You turn and walk back up the tunnel's gentle slope. As you rise, so does the air temperature just slightly. You feel it in your chest first, then on your skin. It's a reminder of how deep the Persians' understanding of nature went. They didn't fight the heat. They slipped beneath it, climbing the last few steps out into the daylight. You feel like you've emerged from a secret layer of the earth, because you have. And now that you know what's below, everything around you looks different. That modest clay house, it's got a built-in river. That shady bench in the courtyard, it's probably cooled from beneath. Even the breeze that just brushed your neck might have taken a shortcut through wet stone, and whispering dark before finding its way to you. You wipe your hands on your tunic or shirt, or imaginary robe stand still for a moment. The desert. Air is dry again, but not unbearable. You realize you've adapted, just like the people here always have. With every step, the architecture reveals not only its brilliance, but its trust that the sun will rise, that water will flow, and that people will shape their world wisely. You look back once more at the hidden entrance to the canet. No signs, no fences, just a barely noticeable dip in the courtyard floor. The secrets of Persia are never flashy. They're humble, practical, and centuries ahead of their time. And they're waiting to cool you down quietly, patiently from the shadows. You step back into the dusty, sunlit streets above the canet system, and now knowing what lies beneath it all makes a kind of quiet sense. The city isn't just a collection of homes, it's a living machine, a cooling machine, and nowhere is that more apparent than in Yazd. You walk its winding alleys now, the clay walls rising close and all on either side of you. The shade falls generously, like a long scarf draped across your shoulders. There's no need for straight lines here. The layout follows centuries-old wisdom. Curve the streets, orient the buildings to the sun, give wind a reason to linger. Yazd isn't just in the desert, it belongs to the desert, and it was built with that in mind. Every inch of it made to push back gently, persistently, against the sun's brute force. So tonight, you're not just exploring a city, you're exploring a philosophy. From above, it looks like a vast field of tan, sun-baked mounds. Roofs, domes, and wind catchers rise like sculpted dunes, blurring the line between nature and civilization. From within, it feels almost labyrinthine, that the chaos is structured every twist and passage designed to channel shade, funnel wind, and protect what matters most, life in a place where nature, left unchecked, would happily dry it out like an apricot left on a rooftop. You wander past a tea shop nestled under a badger. The doorway is small, nothing flashy, but as you duck inside, the temperature drops again, inside. An old man in loose white robes pours hot tea like it's the most normal thing in the world to drink. Boiling liquid on a boiling day. But here, it works. The space is cool enough that the tea feels comforting, not cruel. He gestures for you to sit, and you do, your back against a worn stone wall, your legs stretching over a patterned rug. The mug he hands you is warm, but the air is not. You sip slowly, and the scent of cardamom rises with the steam. Outside, someone walks past with a basket of pomegranates balanced effortlessly on their shoulder. And all around, the city continues its slow, rhythmic breathing. You ask yourself how Yazd became this miracle of comfort in a place that should be unbearable. And the answer, if there is one, is that the people here didn't build to conquer. They built to cooperate. They accepted the rules of the desert and wrote architecture that respected them. You cool the air not by forcing it, but by inviting it. You create a home not by fighting nature, but by collaborating with it. Here's a little-known quirk. Many of Yazd's alleys were designed to be just wide enough for two donkeys to pass no more. And the reasoning wasn't just traffic flow. Narrower alleys meant deeper shade. Deeper shade meant cooler ground. And cooler ground, well, that meant less heat reflecting back up into homes. Even the paving stones were sometimes chosen for their thermal properties. Historians still debate whether the city's initial street grid was consciously planned for airflow, or whether it evolved organically through generations of trial and error. But by the 13th century, it was already recognized by travelers and scholars as one of the most livable cities in the region, despite its location in one of the most inhospitable environments. You leave the tea shop and climb a small stairway. Tucked behind a wall, it leads to a rooftop flat, dry and calm. This is where Yazdis sleep in the summer, not just because of tradition, but because the nights here are beautiful. The heat of the day seeps out of the walls, the wind catchers do their work, and above you, the stars are so clear they look close enough to pluck. You imagine laying down a thin mattress, wrapping yourself in a cotton sheet, and drifting off to the sound of wind whispering through tower vents. No buzzing AC unit, no digital clock casting blue light, just brick, air, stars, and maybe the low murmuring of a neighbor humming a lullaby. Here's a fun historical aside. Some families in Yazd used to reserve roof space. By spreading their bedding early in the evening, it was a kind of sleepy competition, first come, first dream, and yes, sometimes the neighborhood cats also laid claim to those spots. We all know who wins that battle. You lean over the rooftop edge now and look down into the courtyards below. Each one a little oasis, a fig tree, a fountain, a square of tile. Some are shared by multiple families, others are private. All of them are shaped for air and light. Not too much, just enough. These are the lungs of the home daughters you watch. A woman appears in one courtyard, sprinkling water across the tile with a clay jug. It's not for cleaning, it's for cooling. As the water evaporates, it takes heat with it. The air above drops a degree or two, just enough to matter, just enough to make it easier to breathe. This act so simple is 1,000 years old, maybe more, and it's part of the reason Yazd is still here, still lived in, still breathing. There's something else, to something you feel but can't quite name. Maybe it's trust. The people who built this city trusted that the earth could provide solutions, that you didn't have to wall yourself off from the climate. You could shape your life around it. And as you walk back down the narrow stairway and return to the quiet of the alley, you feel it in your body now. That trust, that rhythm. You breathe in and it's cool. You breathe out and the air carries it gently away. The wind moves softly above your head, whizzing between towers, dancing across rooftops, and drifting through doorways like an old friend who doesn't knock anymore. Yazd isn't just a city. It's a living, breathing lullaby in brick and breeze, and you're already halfway asleep. You trail your fingers along the sun-warmed wall as you drift farther from the courtyard, moving slowly through a long, shaded hallway. The light from above thins into golden slivers, and the air changes again lighter now, cleaner somehow, like it's been filtered through time. You're entering the Underuni, the private side of the traditional Persian home. This is the hidden world, the cool heart at the center of the house, and it's here, in these softly lit chambers, that the true magic of Persian domestic design begins to unfold. You ease past a narrow doorway and find yourself in a sitting room, low ceilings, plastered walls, niches carved into the clay like gentle scoops. A single window near the top of the wall lets in a filtered stripe of late afternoon light. It falls on a patterned rug that looks like it's soaked up centuries of footsteps. There's no clutter here, no excess. Every item has been chosen to serve both form and function, right down to the cushions arranged in a U-shape around the center of the room. You lie back on one, and the floor beneath you feels of course cool. Even though it's been roasting outside all day, this room remains a sanctuary. It's all thanks to layers of design choices, orientation, materials, airflow, and the wisdom of generations who understood that you build with the sun, not against it. The Underuni isn't just the physical heart of the house, it's the emotional one, too. This is where the family lived, laughed, gossiped, napped. A space carefully protected from the heat, the dust, and sometimes the outside world itself. And here's a curious twist. This internal sanctuary was often positioned entirely around a central courtyard. Yes, we've seen those already, but now you understand their role differently. That courtyard isn't a pretty bonus, it's the engine of the home. By allowing air to circulate, by holding in pools of cool night air and releasing them slowly throughout the day, the courtyard does more than provide a view. It creates an entire microclimate. Some courtyards even had a Hauser shallow pool, tiled in soft turquoise or sky blue, reflecting sunlight in dancing ripples across the walls. Water lilies might float there, or a bowl of lemons for fragrance. On especially hot days, children would splash their feet in it while the adults dozed or read poetry aloud in the shade. And yes, reading poetry was as much a part of Persian architecture as bricks and mortar. You wander into a room off the courtyard, where the ceiling dips low and the walls curve gently inward. You're now in what might have been a sardab, an underground chamber, often used during the hottest months. Think of it as the ancient version of a summer living room. This space was usually dug slightly below ground level and located at the coolest point in the house, often connected directly to a cannet or badger shaft. Air would pass over the cold, flowing water before entering the room, creating a kind of prehistoric air conditioner. You take a deep breath. The room smells faintly of damp clay and old wood, like something just unearthed but very much alive. Here's your odd little historical nugget. Some of these sardab rooms had built-in sleep platforms, raised areas made of clay or stone, smooth and slightly concave. Why? Because the shape cradled the body and the material stayed cool. You didn't need a mattress. You didn't need anything. Just a cotton sheet, a breeze, and a dream. It's sleep, Persian style. Minimal, perfect, and engineered for comfort. Historians still debate whether sardabs were more of a status symbol or a necessity in certain regions. In Yazd and Kerman, they're practically standard. In other cities, they're less common. But everywhere they appear, they mark a culture that refused to accept suffering as the price of summer. You walk back into the courtyard, and now you're noticing all the vertical geometry, the open vents high on the walls, the staggered steps leading to the roof, the way the windows seem to blink like sleepy eyes. Half-lidded and soft, these aren't random. Every vent is a pressure valve. Every stair is a wind guide. And the roof, that's your sleeping porch, your stargazing deck, your all-night cooling station. And here's something else. You're never far from water. Even in the driest of cities, the homes of ancient Persia were designed to feel like they had access to water. Whether they did or not, a simple clay jug sweating on a ledge, a fountain trickling in the courtyard, a series of channels along the floor that might carry runoff or evaporation. It wasn't just about function, it was about the illusion of abundance, because psychologically, coolness isn't just temperature, it's suggestion. The glint of light on water, the scent of wet tile, the hush of wind over stone, all of it tells your brain, you're safe, you can rest, and your brain listens. You sit at the edge of the house now, trailing your fingers through the still water. A single leaf floats by, somewhere, a pigeon coos, a breeze lifts your sleeve. The world is slow here, gloriously slow, and in that stillness, you realize how much of modern architecture has forgotten how to listen to the sun, how to read the wind, how to let a house become a partner instead of a machine. Here, in these walls, you feel that old alliance between people and place, not adversaries, not conquerors, just roommates. You look up again. The badger is still catching the last rays of sunlight. The mud brick glows softly like a lantern that's just been blown out. You close your eyes and lie back. The architecture will do the rest. You're not sure when you drifted off or if you did at all. Time stretches thin in this place, like taffy under the sun. But now you're rising slowly, dreamily moving back through the courtyard, following the pull of the architecture itself, as if the house has gently taken your hand and whispered, "There's more to see." You step through a low archway and into what feels like another world, the biruni, or outer section of the home. This is where guests would be welcomed, trade might occur, business discussed. But even here in the more public face of the house, the air is just as cool, the design just as deliberate. And now, it's time to appreciate how these two halves, biruni and anderuni, weren't just social distinctions. They were architectural ones. In traditional Persian homes, the separation wasn't about closing people out. It was about controlling light, sound, and most importantly for us tonight, airflow. While the inner chambers were sheltered and wrapped in protective shadow, the outer areas were slightly more exposed, often featuring more openwork windows and higher ceilings to encourage cross breezes. You stand in a talar now, a sort of open veranda space used for gatherings. One side faces the courtyard, the other a high wall carved with geometric latticework. The stone beneath your feet is smoother here, worn from centuries of sandal soles. Columns frame the view. Not heavy pillars, but tall, narrow, almost reed-like columns. They rise toward a wooden ceiling latticed with beams, some purely structural, others carved just to please the eye. The light falls in stripes. The air moves differently here, less like a sigh, more like a whisper gliding past your shoulder. A breeze sweeps through the talar and disappears into the next room without effort. You follow it, barefoot and unhurried. And here's a curious little quirk. In some homes, the biruni was deliberately built with fewer openings on the side facing the street. Why? Because the cooler air from the courtyard needed to be preserved. Fewer points of escape meant more stable indoor temperatures. This made the homes feel quiet, self-contained, like little islands of calm floating in the noisy sea of city life. Historians still argue whether this architectural seclusion was a response to climate alone, or whether social customs around privacy and hospitality shaped it just as strongly. Most agree it was both. In Persia, design didn't serve a single function, it solved multiple problems at once. You notice now how different textures play a role. The walls in this outer section are still made of kesh, those trusty mud bricks, but some are faced with decorative plaster or glazed tile in cooler tones. Pale turquoise, moss green, a hint of cobalt. These surfaces don't just look pretty, they're easier to clean, more reflective of sunlight, and better at deflecting heat during the burning afternoons. One tile catches the light and winks at you. And here's your offbeat fact for the night. Some Persian homes had decorative elements that also served as cooling cues. A lattice pattern on a wall wasn't just aesthetic, it created airflow turbulence. That helped dissipate heat. Even color choice mattered. Lighter walls reflected heat. Blue tiles believed to evoke water created a psychological cooling effect, which studies show might actually lower your perception of temperature. That's right. The right color might convince your brain it's not as hot as it is. Try telling your air conditioner that You walk past a small E1 vaulted, semi-enclosed sitting space. It's just big enough for a few cushions and a low table. This might have been where guests were served tea or where visiting scholars read poetry aloud in the early morning breeze. You sit down and feel the cool plaster beneath your hand. The breeze, now stronger, flows through the high, open front and exits through smaller side vents built discreetly into the walls. It's like being inside a wind instrument tuned for summer afternoons. You exhale and let your eyes follow the lines of the vaulted ceiling, simple at first, then swirling outward like a frozen gust captured in stucco. This space might be public, but it's not impersonal. The architecture still knows how to care for you, and it's not done yet. You hear a soft trickling like someone whispering a lullaby in a language made of water. You follow the sound, and just around the corner, tucked behind a row of flowering shrubs, is a small sobbler, a water basin used to catch runoff from the canets, or rainwater channeled from the roofs. It's shallow, filled with clear water, and ringed by stones cooled by evaporation. In the heat of the day, someone might splash their hands here, or wet a scarf and drape it around their shoulders. And at night, it becomes a tiny mirror, reflecting moonlight across the courtyard wall. Flickering like candlelight, you dip your fingers in and watch the ripples. The air above the water smells faintly of lime blossom and old stone. It cools your skin instantly. In more elaborate homes, these basins could be linked to small fountains or channels that carried water from one section of the house to another. But even in modest homes, the principle remained the same: introduce water into the dry air and let nature do the rest. No compressor, no power cord, just a quiet agreement between the elements. And speaking of agreements, some houses even featured wind traps carved into the entry walls of the Biruni chambers. These small, angled indentations weren't obvious, but they guided wind downward into the base of a wall, cooling the stone before the air rose up again into the room. It's a trick barely anyone today knows how to replicate, but it worked. You're sitting in the proof. You rise slowly from the E1, stretch and wander back toward the center of the house. The Andrunia awaits again, quieter, darker, cooler. But this section, this Biruni, it was never just about greeting guests. It was a performance, a demonstration of how the very first impression of your home could feel like relief. The cool whisper of a shaded bench, the hush of water on tile, a breeze that somehow knew just when to arrive. And you know what? It still works, even now, centuries later, in a house that may no longer stand. You're still being cooled by the memory of it. The light has shifted again. It's softer now, almost liquid, slipping across the courtyard like warm tea poured into a shallow bowl. You're back in the heart of the house, but your steps take you somewhere different, this time down a narrow set of steps, low and uneven, curving in a spiral. Your hand grazes the wall as you descend, and the temperature drops with every turn. By the time you reach the bottom, your skin tingles like it's remembered something ancient. You've entered the basement bathhouse, a hamamikanegi, a private home bath, cooled and calmed by the same passive design principles you've been discovering all night. This isn't the grand marble bathhouses of empires or eco and ceremony. This is quieter, domestic, deeply human. The space opens around you with surprising generosity. Smooth stone floors, arched ceilings with tiny openings that let in narrow shafts of light. The air feels still, but in a good way, like it's settled here on purpose, folding itself around you. And somewhere beyond the far arch, you can hear the soft splash of water being drawn from a clay cistern. Here's the secret: these rooms weren't just for bathing. They were for cooling the soul. In ancient Persia, the bathhouse wasn't an indulgence. It was part of life. And even in private homes, a scaled-down version might exist, carved deep into the earth to take advantage of the stable, cool temperatures. Underground, no AC unit humming here, just stone, water, and time doing their quiet, perfect work. Historians still argue whether these private hammams were more prevalent among merchant families, or if they were standard features of all but the humblest homes. Some records suggest even modest households carved out small, simple versions of them, just big enough to squat, scrub, and sing softly while steam curled along the ceiling. And here's a lovely quirk. Some bath areas included small air exchange chimneys that doubled as wind catchers in reverse. When hot water was used, steam rose and exited through the chimney. As it did, it created a tiny pressure change, pulling cooler air in from other parts of the house. The result, a self-ventilating, cooling loop powered by bath water and gravity dart. You step farther into the space, where worn bricks form a low platform. This is where the water was mixed cool from the cabinet, hot from a clay-lined stove chamber tucked into the wall. The two were blended manually in wide basins to create the perfect bathing temperature. And tonight, the perfect temperature is somewhere between tepid and sleep-inducing. You imagine sitting here after a long dessert walk, steam curling off your shoulders, clay walls beading with moisture, your breath slow and shallow as the day's heat finally slips away. Now, imagine this. In some homes, the hammam wasn't only a space for washing. It was a place for gathering, storytelling, even matchmaking. Mothers and daughters might sit side by side on the wall floor, humming while rinsing out their scarves. Older men might play quiet games or recite poems from memory, their voices echoing softly beneath the dome. You pause by one of the alcoves carved into the wall, a niche for storing towels or maybe a lantern. A single beam of sunlight falls across it now, catching on the edge of a glazed tile fragment that must have once lined the entire room. Pale blue, chipped at the corner but still beautiful. The color blue again, that cooling hue you keep running into not just decorative psychological insulation, a way to trick the mind into relaxing. It's no coincidence that so many ancient Persian interiors used turquoise, lapis, and indigo in spaces built for rest. You sit now on a raised slab of stone, still cool to the touch, and close your eyes. You can almost hear the slow drip of a worn spout, the soft thud of bare feet on wet tile, the long exhale of someone letting go of the heat. And here's your odd tidbit of the night. Some hammams used crushed pomegranate peels as part of a traditional exfoliant paste. Mixed with ash and oil, it smelled faintly sweet and acidic and left the skin clean, cool, and lightly perfumed. The same fruit you saw earlier in the basket cleansing inside and out. It's strange, isn't it? How advanced this all feels. Not in a futuristic way, but in a deeply wise way. Cooling isn't treated like a battle here. There's no war against the elements, just rituals of balance, of cooperation. You don't defeat the sun. You dance with it. You rise slowly. Your body a little heavier now, like it's soaking in the calm that's seeped into these bricks over centuries. You climb the spiral steps again, emerging into the light of the courtyard. And above you, those wind catchers still spin their silent web, nudging air gently through each room like invisible caretakers. The bathhouse below cools the house. Above, the walls absorb the warmth and release it slowly. The water moves unseen through tunnels. And every piece of the home works together. No need for buttons, timers, or remote controls. You walk past the house again. Its water looks different now. Deeper, somehow. More secretive. And you start to understand something, not with your brain, but with your bones. This house doesn't just cool you, it remembers you. It's designed for breath, for stillness, for sleep, and right now, it's doing its job perfectly. You make your way through the dimming house, shadows curling like soft smoke across the tile as evening draws near. The light fades gently here, not with abruptness, but with intention, the way it always does in these kinds of homes. Thick walls, narrow openings, and layers of filtered light mean that dusk arrives not all at once, but like a curtain being drawn slowly, inch by inch. And now your steps carry you to the rooftop. The ascent is familiar. The stairs are steep and slightly uneven, as if shaped more by foot than chisel. You pass a stack of folded mats, a brass water jug, and the soft scent of dried herbs tucked into a clay dish, maybe mint or savory. It's hard to tell in the evening breeze. Then you're there. The roof opens above you like a breath you've been waiting to take all day. Wide, quiet, infinite. You're not the first to come up here. The surface is worn smooth in certain places, the kind of wear That comes only from years of sleeping bodies, scattered cushions, and long talks under stars. Some of the roof is domed in little bubbles. These are the tops of the rooms below, shaped like turtle backs, designed to shed heat and cradle wind. Others are flat, tiled with clay or plastered smooth. You cross the surface slowly, your feet warmed by the fading memory of the sun. All around you, other rooftops stretch like a patchwork of sleep. A few families are already settling in. You see the flicker of an oil lamp here, hear the clink of a tea glass there. The city hums without electricity. It breathes through design. And this rooftop, it's the ultimate cooling chamber. Here's the historical brilliance in homes. Without wind catchers or in regions with fewer canons, people relied on radiative cooling. During the night, heat stored in walls and rooftops is released into the vast sky. The temperature of the sky, especially in dry climates, is significantly lower than the Earth's surface, allowing heat to radiate away. You might not see it with your eyes, but if you could, you'd watch warmth rise into the stars like steam from a teacup. Historians still argue whether early Persian architects understood the science of radiative cooling, or simply observed that rooftops made the best sleeping quarters. Either way, they took full advantage of it. Roofs were designed with special coatings, lime plaster or pale clay, that radiated heat more efficiently and resisted solar absorption the next day. It wasn't high-tech. It was right-tech. You lie down on a low sleeping platform, just tall, enough to keep you above the warm tiles, just simple enough to blend into the roof itself. A folded cotton quilt lies beside you, not needed yet but placed in ritual. This was the Persian answer to the modern bedroom, a sleeping space, where the walls were made of sky. And here's your quirky detail. In some regions, families would chart the stars from their rooftops not just for stories or dreams, but for weather prediction. The clarity of the stars and the thickness of the Milky Way could offer subtle hints about seasonal shifts. The rooftop became not just a place of rest, but a dome of prophecy. You exhale slowly. The air has changed again. Cooler now. Sharper at the edges. Not cold, but cutting. The kind of cool that settles inside you. That doesn't blow, doesn't rush, just surrounds you like silk soaked in moonlight. A breeze brushes over the rooftop, tugging lightly at the edge of your shirt, your thoughts. It's come down from the Zagros Mountains, maybe, or off the salt plains to the east. Either way, it's traveled and now it's here, drawn by centuries-old architecture that knew how to catch it. You hear a low murmur from the rooftop next door, someone reciting a verse, maybe Hafez or Rumi. Something about the stars, something about longing. You can't make out the words, but the tone sinks gently into your chest like a lullaby. You glance up, and the sky, it's an ocean tonight, dark blue, not black, pinned with 100 glittering stars and a moon so pale it looks dusted with flour. Above Yazd, the sky is always closed, like you could reach up and run your fingers through it if only you were slightly taller. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you're back inside the house again, in the courtyard, in the hammam beside the house. Every space flowing into the next, all of it connected by the one thing that rules everything here. Air, moving through vents, dancing across water, tunneling beneath the earth, rising up into the sky, cooling you with every pass, and unlike modern systems, it doesn't hum or click or break down at 2 a.m. It doesn't turn on. It just is. You shift slightly on the rooftop bed. The surface is still warm beneath you, but the breeze has turned cooler now. Your body relaxes into the contrast. You breathe out slowly, and your breath disappears into the same air that cooled the bricks that built the homes, that shaped the city that still stands. And here's your final nudge for tonight. Somewhere in the world right now, an architect is poring over blueprints, scratching their head, wondering how to keep a new building cool without using more power. They're probably thinking about solar panels, smart windows, maybe geothermal. But maybe, just maybe, they should start with mud. The stars above are still glowing softly like embers scattered in a vast, blue-black hearth. But something new draws your attention now, a faint, rhythmic clacking from a nearby rooftop. followed by a hushed, metallic squeak. You turn your head, and there it is. A figure stands silhouetted against the night sky, hoisting a ceramic pot from a pulley. A long, weathered rope creaks as it's drawn upward, hand over hand. No rush, no struggle, just slow, practiced movement. You've found the rooftop cistern. In a city like Yazd, any ancient Persian town built for survival, rooftop water storage was more than a convenience. It was an art form, and in this section of your night wander, you're going to explore how these quiet, unassuming cisterns helped households stay cool, hydrated, and resilient long before the concept of plumbing existed. You walk across the rooftop toward the silhouette, careful not to disturb the sleeping mats and half-finished cups of tea left by neighbors. The cistern is built like a miniature dome, its curved sides plastered smooth with lime and ash to keep sunlight from soaking into deeply. A wooden lid sits loosely atop the central opening. The figure disappears inside, likely pouring the freshly drawn water into a basin for cooling the roof tiles. You take their place at the edge and peer in. It's not deep, but it's clever. The interior is lined with baked bricks, slanted ever so slightly to guide rainwater or pumped canned water toward the center. Some cisterns were fed directly by underground cannons, while others collected precious rainfall from nearby surfaces. A series of filters, layers of sand, gravel, or even charcoal kept out grit, insects, and whatever else might wander in. And here's the brilliant part. Water wasn't just stored here. It was actively used to cool the roof. Some families poured it slowly across the flat tiles in the evening, just as the heat began to rise from the house's thermal mass. As the water evaporated, it pulled that heat away, lowering the ambient temperature just enough to make rooftop sleeping peaceful. Others dampened woven mats and laid them across shaded corners, creating pockets of coolness that lasted until sunrise. Historians still argue whether this evaporative cooling was a secondary use or a primary design feature from the start. But regardless, the effect was real. Water and air teaming up again in quiet, brilliant simplicity. And now for your quirky detail of the night. In some desert regions, particularly those with bitterly cold winters, cisterns were also used to store ice. Yes, ice in the desert. Using a clever combination of radiative cooling, stone insulation, and early winter freezes, Persian engineers created yakhals, ice pits, often shaped like beehives and built partly underground. During the coldest months, water was poured into shallow basins at night. As it froze, it was chipped into blocks and stored in these deep, conical chambers, covered with insulating domes. Some households had miniature versions of these on their rooftops or in shaded corners. Ice in summer, centuries before electricity. Let that settle in. You step back from the cistern and settle again on the rooftop mat. Your skin still cooled from the contact with the smooth, pale tile. All around you, the desert city sighs under its blanket of stars. Not asleep, just paused. Still, listening. You glance toward a nearby wind catcher, its silhouette sharp against the Milky Way. It's turned slightly, a notch in its direction, capturing a night breeze that's shifted from the east. The warm day has given way to cool relief, and the rooftop is now the best room in the house. From down below, a low clang of pottery echoes softly, someone preparing a midnight snack, perhaps, or washing up with the leftover water from the basin. You smile. Even this small act is shaped by the architecture. The pottery stays cooler if stored near the cannet-fed tiles. The cups dry faster on the shaded roof railings. Everything has been thought through, and yet nothing feels over-designed. It's also human. You begin to understand that ancient Persian homes weren't just built for function, they were built for flow. Water flowed underfoot. Air flowed through vents. People flowed from room to room depending on time, season, and temperature. The home was a living organism. No single part mattered more than the others, because they all worked together. And even now, lying here in the cool hush of night, you're part of that flow. You imagine the rooftop in daylight, children climbing the steps with baskets of fruit, women hanging sheets to dry in the wind, elders watching the horizon for signs of weather, all of them unconsciously tending to the climate. of the house just by living. The rope pulley creaks again. Another household. Another jug. Another cool surface being readied for the coming heat. You look up. The stars haven't moved, but you feel them differently now. They seem less like distant lights and more like quiet observers, witnesses to a system of living that treated heat, not as an enemy, but as a dance partner. You dip, you twirl, you step aside, you follow. The moon hangs low, pale and dusty like the lime-washed cistern you just leaned over. You close your eyes, and the air clean, silent, ancient drifts across your face and into your dreams. Morning comes slowly here. It doesn't pounce or blaze. It seeps gently through slatted shutters, through domes and arches and latticework, brushing against walls still drowsy from the night's release of heat. You don't open your eyes. Right away. The air is still cool. The sky still that pre-dawn violet that only lasts a few minutes. And your rooftop mattress still just warm enough to cradle you without protest. But eventually, the scent of fresh bread reaches you. You sit up slowly, the quilt sliding off your shoulders like a soft tide. Across the rooftops, faint columns of smoke rise from neighborhood ovens. You hear the low rhythm of footsteps the baker's apprentice, perhaps hauling flat loaves from the oven, still puffed and crackling at the edges. And that's where we're going next, into the kitchen courtyard. Yes, Persian homes had an entire microclimate just for cooking. Because if you're trying to keep a house cool in 100 degrees Fahrenheit heat, the last thing you want is a fire in the middle of the living space. You slip back down through the stairwell and enter a side chamber that opens into another, more utilitarian courtyard. This one is smaller, rougher around the edges, with storage jars against the walls and a few open counters where vegetables are being sorted. It smells like onions and mint. There's a water spigot, its clay channel running into a sloped tile basin for rinsing. This is the Ashpaz kitchen zone. And here's the trick. Unlike modern Western kitchens, Persian kitchens were often partially outdoors or in semi-covered courtyards. This served several brilliant functions. First, it meant the heat from cooking didn't collect inside the house. Second, the smoke and steam could escape freely into the air without clogging indoor ventilation. And third, well, it made a lot of sense when cooking involved firewood and clay ovens instead of induction cooktops. You notice a Tanner oven set into the wall, its mouth blackened from years of open flame. Bread dough is slapped against its interior like a magician sticking a card to a wall. A few loaves sit cooling on a woven reed mat nearby. Still warm, still steaming. You grab one and tear off a corner. It's airy inside, soft but structured. The crust crunches gently, then melts into heat and flour and a tiny hint of smoke. The best part? This bread has cooled without losing its warmth. You marvel again at the design, how the kitchen's clay walls, built thick and low, radiate just enough residual heat to keep food warm without scorching it. Historians still debate whether these kitchen layouts emerged primarily from climate necessity or social convention. Some believe it was a way to separate mess from the more refined inner spaces. Others insist it was purely about thermal logic. Most likely, it was both function meeting form in the slow-baked way. All good traditions do. And here's your fringe fact of the morning. Some homes incorporated herb drying alcoves directly into their kitchen walls. These were little pocket shelves carved into the sun-facing side where sprigs of mint, thyme, and savory could be left to crisp into dry dessert air. Not only did it smell incredible, but the slow drying also created an ongoing low-level cooling through moisture release, like hanging a wet towel in a breeze, but tastier. You notice a narrow flue vent stretching from the oven area all the way to the roof. It's thin, almost hidden in the corner, but vital. This vent guided smoke away from the cooking area without letting in heat from outside. Another example of passive architecture that didn't just manage air, but directed it like music. You hear movement beside you now. A woman, older, graceful in her movements, emerges from a side door carrying a bowl of chopped cucumbers. She nods at you. Unfazed by your presence, she pours the cucumbers into a glazed basin filled with yogurt, mint, and a little cracked ice-mast-o-khir, the cool, sleepy breakfast of 1,000 Persian mornings. She gestures for you, dis it. You do. The bench beneath you is curved and worn smooth. The breeze finds you here, too narrowing between the walls of the courtyard, cooled by the overnight air still lingering in the stone. And as you sip the yogurt from a wooden spoon, you realize that even the food here is designed for heat. It's not heavy, it's not demanding. It's hydrating, chilled, and balanced like everything else in this house. After breakfast, you rinse the spoon in the basin, the water trickling over your fingers and catching the light as it runs away through a carved channel into the courtyard. Drain. Nothing wasted. Everything returning. You rise and explore the edges of the kitchen space. Clay pots with wide mouths sit on raised bricks, the kind used for cooling dairy or storing grain. In one corner, a lidded jar sits half-submerged in a basin of water, an early refrigerator. The principle is simple. Water evaporation from the surface of the pot keeps the contents inside several degrees cooler than the air. Cheese, milk, maybe some leftover stew kept fresh with no electricity, no noise, no problem. It's the opposite of modern design. No buzz, no bulk, no blinking lights, just balance. And it's all tied to the one thing that keeps coming back again and again, thermal mass. These walls, this floor, the roof above, they aren't just surfaces, they're storage devices for time, for coolth, if we're allowed to make up a word. The house captures coolness and releases it slowly, like a storyteller unspooling a tale across the hours. Even the dishes seem to understand this. Clay bowls that hold cold, copper trays that shed heat, linen covers that breathe just enough to protect without trapping warmth. And so you leave the kitchen courtyard cooled from the inside out, not just your body, but your brain. The systems here are quiet, predictable, natural, and that predictability is soothing in a way modern systems rarely are. The bread is cooling on the mat. The yogurt is stored in the jar. The walls are already beginning their daily slow dance with the sun. And you're floating through it all like air itself welcomed, guided, cooled. You wander back into the main courtyard, belly full, skin cooled, brain lightly fogged in the post-breakfast haze that only certain homes, those truly in tune with the world around them, can induce. The sun is climbing now, slowly, deliberately, but climbing all the same. Its light stretches across the house, sending flickers across the stone walls like liquid lace. And now it's time to look up again. You're about to step inside one of the true marvels of ancient Persian cooling, the Windcatcher Tower, or as it's known in Farsi, the Badger. You've seen them looming over the rooftops already, those tall, thin structures rising like frozen sails above the skyline. Now you stand beneath one, your neck craning, eyes squinting into the segmented darkness above. It's taller than it looks from the ground. The interior veins, made from baked brick or sometimes wood, stretch up and up, catching and dividing the breeze into separate vertical shafts. And here's the magic. It doesn't matter which way the wind is blowing, because these towers were multi-directional. Each face of the Badger is open to a different compass point, meaning wind from any direction can enter. Once inside, it's guided downward, pulled into the house by a combination of pressure, changes and simple convection. Cool air in, hot air out. You walk into the room directly beneath the tower, often called a wind room. The shift in air temperature is immediate. It's subtle, like someone turned on an invisible fan. But instead of a buzzing motor, all you hear is the soft hush of movement. It's like standing in the throat of a sleeping giant. And here's your mainstream fact of the day. Badgers weren't just used in homes. They were also integrated into mosques, bathhouses, and water reservoirs, even caravanserais. Anywhere heat could become a problem, these towers offered a quiet solution. Historians still debate who first invented the wind catcher. Was it the Persians in Yazd, or earlier Mesopotamians? Some argue Egyptians had early versions, but few dispute that ancient Iranians brought it to full architectural maturity, refining, multiplying, perfecting. In Yazd alone, there were once thousands of these towers, a city shaped by air. You look up again. A bird darts past the tower opening, just a glimpse of wing and shadow. You wonder if it nests there, enjoying the breeze like you do. A free tenant in the best called real estate on earth. And now, for your fringe tidbit, some badgers were equipped with internal water basins or channels so that the incoming air would pass over water before entering the house. The result, a double cooling effect, air cooled by wind, then cooled again by evaporation. It's basically a prehistoric swamp cooler minus the humming, the leaking, and the angry warranty paperwork. In some homes, the airflow from the badger would be directed into an underground sardab or summer room. Remember those? There. The already cooled air would sink even lower in temperature as it passed over wet stones or stored water before rising again into the living spaces. It wasn't just passive design. It was strategic, deliberate, layered cooling, an environmental symphony written in brick and time. You run your fingers along the plastered wall near the base of the tower. It's cooler than the air. A faint vibration hums through it, the movement of wind. The life of the structure itself, it's not mechanical, but it moves, it responds. And the more you learn, the more it feels like these buildings weren't built. So much has grown. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat beneath the badger's shaft. The breeze settles gently across your arms, your cheeks. You breathe in, long and slow, and even the air seems to say, "You're not supposed to fight me, you're supposed to follow me." And that's the secret of Persian design. Cooperation. Not just with air, but with heat, with time, with need. These homes didn't try to overpower the climate, they learned to converse with it. Like a host listening to a guest, like a poet finishing someone else's line. You lie back again, staring up at the shaft's dim geometry. The bricks spiral slightly, nothing perfect, but purposeful. Some badgers had decorative tiling inside or built-in bird perches. Others were left rough, their interiors echoing faintly with the sound of wind. Each one was unique, hand-built, adapted to its home, its elevation, its direction. You don't get that from a blueprint. You get that from understanding. And here's a little extra truth for you. The badger was low-tech, yes, but it was also high precision. Builders would spend days testing the wind patterns before choosing which direction to orient the main shaft. Some would even adjust the size and angle of the interior vanes seasonally. It wasn't set it and forget it. It was living architecture, always adjusting, always aware. You hear a laugh from outside, someone on a nearby roof, maybe a jug tips. Water spills and you catch the faintest whiff of mint and ceramic. The breeze shifts again. The tower responds without effort, drawing that freshness down to you. The house breathes. And here's one last image to carry with you for now. Centuries ago, a traveler might step into a year's home after days in the desert, face red, throat dry, skin like parchment. They'd enter the courtyard, be led to a shaded bench beneath the badger, given a clay cup of cool water, and within minutes they'd feel reborn. Not because of ice, not because of Freon, but because the house knew what to do. And now it's doing the same for you. The wind has a rhythm now. You sit beneath the badger, eyes half-lidded, lulled by the way air swirls and settles across your face. Every few moments, it shifts direction slightly, like the house is breathing in, out, pause. You're not thinking much anymore, just floating, until something brushes against your foot. You look down. A scrap of cloth, soft, hand-woven, and damp at the edges, has slipped from a low shelf and found your toes. Someone must have left it here earlier, dampened it for cooling, or used it to dust the walls. You pick it up and suddenly your thoughts tumble forward into the next quiet marvel of this world. Textiles and temperature. Yes, in a place like this, even the fabrics are part of the architecture. You rise slowly and make your way toward the sleeping alcove on the shady side of the courtyard. There's no ceiling fan, no buzzing appliance, but as you step through the arched doorway, the change is undeniable. The light dims, the sound dampens, and the temperature drops at least 5 degrees. It's like walking into a sigh. And then you see them, layers of textiles everywhere, woven reed mats along the floor, cotton nammets, pressed felt rugs lining the benches, fine linen curtains pulled back with twine. Not thick enough to block all the light, but just enough to scatter it like milk through tea. A stack of bedding in the corner, folded neatly, thin quilts for summer, thicker ones for winter. All stitched by hand, all breathable. Here's the brilliance. Textiles here aren't just for comfort. They're tools. During the day, large cloth panels are hung across open doorways not to seal the space, but to guide the air. As breezes move through the house, they push gently against the fabric, which sways and flutters, creating microcurrents of cooler air in its wake. Imagine a hand gently stirring the atmosphere, drawing warmth away from your skin with every ripple. Historians still argue whether these fabrics were more about modesty, airflow, or visual harmony. But most agree they worked. A simple curtain could cut heat by degrees without cutting off the life of the room. And then there's the wet cloth trick, maybe the most elegantly low-tech cooling device of all time. Families would soak thin sheets in water, sometimes infused with rose water or herbs, and hang them across open archways or across the top of a window. As the dry air passed through, it cooled and moistened. It didn't just feel better, it was better. Lower temperature, higher comfort, no machine needed. You sit down on one of the mats now, feeling how the rush matting stays cool beneath you. It doesn't trap heat like synthetic fabrics do, it breathes. You run your palm across it, and it sighs softly, as if acknowledging its role in all of this. And here's your quirky fact for the day. Persian households often scented their textiles with natural cooling agents, lavender, mint, rose, even a little crushed camphor. These weren't just pleasant smells, they were functional. Some were mild insect repellents. Others created a psychological chill, tricking the body into thinking it was cooler than it really was. Your grandmother's embroidered pillow wasn't just for show. It was a climate device. You stretch your legs out and lean back against a cushion that smells faintly of basil and cedar. Somewhere behind you, water trickles into the courtyard house, and a curtain flutters in a rhythm you didn't realize you'd begun breathing in sync with. This room, like all the others, has thick walls about a meter thick, made of mud brick and straw. Their texture is soft, a little crumbly at the corners, but they hold cool air the way your lungs hold breath. On the walls hang more textiles, simple geometric prints in indigo and clay red. They're not heavy, just enough to keep the surface from radiating back the sun's heat during the day. They insulate, but gently. And now you notice something small but brilliant: raised sleeping platforms carved into the walls. Not beds in the modern sense, just slightly elevated ledges wide, enough to spread a mattress and quilt. Why raised? Because hot air rises. These ledges let the sleeper hover right in the sweet spot of moving air, neither too high, nor too low, not too cold, not too warm, just still. You lie down on one. The ceiling above is curved, not flat-shaped, to prevent heat pockets from settling in the upper corners. It arches gently, like a shell or the inside of a fruit. You wonder who thought of that first dot, and then your gaze drifts to the woven fly screen hanging loosely over the opening to the next room. Not metal, not plastic, just mesh made of reeds and thread, soaked in vinegar once a week to deter flies. The wind flows through it. The insects don't. You smile. Everything here has a job. Nothing is decoration alone. Nothing is energy wasting. Nothing fights the heat, it just outsmarts it. And as you drift into another wave of near sleep, you realize how rare that is. In a world of artificial coolness of fans and vents and ductwork and plugs, this place feels like a living organism. One that wears soft, handmade clothing, that pulls a damp cloth across its own forehead when it gets warm, that sighs out heat at dusk and invites in breeze at dawn. The curtain sways once more. A sparrow chirps in the courtyard, and a threadbare pillow under your head becomes the coolest, kindest place on earth. You don't realize how long you've been lying there. The room has cradled you gently. No clocks, no screens, no electric buzz, just the low hum of the afternoon air shifting softly through fabric, the occasional rustle of footsteps outside, and the almost musical creak of wood expanding under slow heat. But now your attention drifts again, not upward this time, down, because beneath these floors lies one of the most extraordinary and least visible features of Persian climate design, the cadence system. You rise slowly, slip your sandals back on and step back into the courtyard. The breeze has faded somewhat. The day has grown still. It's that suspended hour before evening when the city seems to pause and the earth holds its breath. At the far end of the courtyard, half hidden by a low fig tree and a stack of clay pots, you spot it. A circular, lipped opening in the ground. Not deep, not dangerous, but deliberate. This isn't a well. It's an air shaft, part of the cadence system's intricate network of underground tunnels. Cadence are one of the most ancient water technologies in the world, born in Persia over 3,000 years ago and still in use today. You squat beside the opening and peer in. It's dark. You can't see the water, but you can feel it. The air is cooler here, tinged with dampness, carrying a scent that reminds you of limestone and time. And here's your mainstream fact. Cadence are essentially horizontal aqueducts, gently sloped tunnels dug through mountain foothills, designed to carry groundwater from high elevations down to settlements far below, all using gravity. No pumps required. That means cool water, flowing underground, shielded from sunlight, arriving exactly where it's needed without losing temperature along the way. Some cadence stretch for miles. Some are shallow. Others descend into labyrinths of hand-dug shafts and channels so extensive they could rival small subway systems. And the crazy part? They were often dug by hand, meter by teams of laborers who navigated claustrophobic tunnels. Armed with nothing but lamps, pickaxes, and hope, you walk along the edge of the courtyard now, following the faint trace of a line slightly. Darker bricks set into the flooring, marking the path of the cadence beneath your feet. These channels don't just bring water, they also pull cool air from deep underground and help ventilate rooms passively. Some homes even had cadence-connected basements, called shabastans or sardabs, designed specifically to catch this air. A wind catcher would draw air downward. It would pass over the cadence water tunnel, chill, and then rise into the living space. The result? Natural, air-conditioned air. Ancient, silent, effective. Historians still argue whether this cooling function was a planned innovation or a happy accident discovered centuries after the first cadence were dug. But regardless, the effect was undeniable. And here's your fringe fact of the evening. In some towns, cadence inspectors were elected by the community not just for maintenance, but to listen. These men would lie flat beside the air shafts and use hollow reeds or ceramic tubes to detect changes in water level or flow. A shift in tone meant a blockage. A soft gurgle could signal collapse. It was water music. It was life. You head toward a small door set into the corner wall of the house near the cadence line. You unlatch it and descend slowly into the sardab, the subterranean room, reserved for peak summer days. The air is immediately several degrees cooler, even though there's no machine running, just brick, water, and air doing their timeless duet. It's dim down here. A small clay oil lamp flickers on a ledge, casting shadows on the walls, which are rounded and soft like the inside of a well-worn bowl. The floor is lined with glazed tiles, pale blue, the color of morning sky. In one corner, a jug of water sits half submerged in a stone basin, staying cool all day thanks to the evaporative effect and the cadence flow beneath. You take a seat on a low stone bench. The silence wraps around you like gauze. This is not just a room, it's a retreat, a place to rest, to wait out the hottest hours of the year, to store food, to store thoughts. There's a faint drip from the cadence channel in the corner, just enough to make a rhythm you could fall asleep to, and again. You marvel not at how clever all this is, but how non-violent. This isn't heat versus machine. It's cooperation, understanding, humility. And now, here's a quiet image for you. Centuries ago, on a day much like this, a family might gather in this sardab. Grandparents fanning themselves with woven reeds, children snacking on dates and yogurt, parents sipping tea and whispering stories. The world outside shimmering with heat, but in here, calm, cool, unrushed. You close your eyes, and suddenly you're not in the 21st century anymore. You're not surrounded by air conditioners or digital thermostats. You're surrounded by logic and earth, clay and wind, water and quiet. 1,000 small decisions made by people. Who knew that the best way to survive the sun was to learn how to listen to it? You take one last deep breath of that subterranean air damp, still ancient. And then, slowly, you rise again. The house has more to show you. The climb back up from the sardab is slow, deliberately so. You pause on each step, allowing your body to adjust from the cool subterranean air to the drier warmth above. There's no rush. This house never seems to demand anything of you. It's content to let you move at the pace of earth and breath. You step back into the courtyard just as the sun begins to dip lower in the sky. Shadows stretch longer across the stone, curling like sleepy cats around the base of the house. The light is softer now, golden and almost syrupy. You look around and realize something has changed. The house is beginning to transform. You might not see it at first, but it's there in the shifting textiles in the open doors, in the quiet padding of feet. The architecture is getting ready for evening mode. And so are you. Persian homes were never static. They changed with the day, the seasons, the guests, and the temperature. And now, as the sun cools, this one opens like a flower after dusk. You walk toward one of the side rooms, where earlier sunlight had made it too warm to enter. Now, the temperature has dropped, and the room feels inviting again. A young boy is folding back the woven reed mats that had been hung over the doorway. He hooks them neatly out of the way, and then pulls aside a light cotton curtain to let the breeze through. A faint scent of jasmine floats in, and for a moment, you forget everything else. Here's today's mainstream fact. Persian houses were intentionally designed for daily transformation. Rooms weren't assigned permanent functions like we used to. A bedroom could become a tea room. A sitting area might serve as a summer sleeping space. Furniture was minimal and movable, more often mats and cushions than chairs and tables so. Spaces could adapt fluidly with the weather. There's no fixed dining room here, no sealed-off guest suite, just zones of possibility. And during the hottest part of the day, many of these zones simply shut down, closed, shaded, silent. But as the evening cools the air and softens the walls, they reawaken one by one. You wander into a new chamber room facing the courtyard but slightly elevated, with a low threshold and a polished tile floor. A Mashrabia-style window, made from intricately carved wood, lets dappled light filter through in patterns that dance. Across the walls like lace, a few women sit on cushions near the wall, shelling pistachios and sipping rosewater tea. Their laughter is soft, low, the kind that curls around you like the sound of distant wind chimes. And here's your fringe fact. Some Persian homes incorporated timed vents, not mechanical, of course, but designed to align with the sun's arc. Certain bricks or small slits were placed in a way that they'd only let air through at specific times of day, allowing for natural timers on when certain rooms became cool or warm. No switches, no dials, just geometry. You notice that many of the doors are left partially open now, not wide, not gaping, just enough to allow for airflow paths. This is another principle of Persian cooling, strategic cross-ventilation. It's not about blasting wind through a house. It's about setting up the perfect low-pressure channel so air glides rather than gusts. You pass another window now, this one covered with colored glass amber, cobalt, green. A gentle glow fills the room like the inside of a kaleidoscope. These weren't just decorative. The glass filtered harsh sunlight into something kinder, easier on the eyes, cooler in tone. Everything here is deliberate. Even the color of light is part of the cooling equation. You pause beside a shelf where someone has stacked hand fans woven palm, shaped like fish or fig leaves. Children run past you, each grabbing one, laughing as they flap their way into the next room. And again, you feel that motion. The house isn't a set of boxes. It's a loop, a flow. You're not walking through it. You're being carried. Historians still debate whether these evening routines were architecturally led or socially driven. But they agree on one thing. Persian homes were never still. They were responsive, ritualistic, a live dot. And now for your quirky tidbit. Some families kept cooling diaries, little household journals, noting which rooms were most comfortable at what time of day during each season. Over the years, these notes became guides. Use the west room after midsummer, or open the northern archway when the apricot trees bloom. Climate memory. Passed down not through weather apps but through whispered observation. You make your way toward the central house once more, where lanterns have been lit around its edge. The surface of the water reflects their glow with slow, syrupy ripples. A few guests are gathering nearby, unrolling long cotton tablecloths onto the courtyard floor. Cushions are set in a half circle. Someone brings out a tray of cold cherries. The evening meal will begin soon. You dip your fingers into the house. The water is still cool, colder than the air now, thanks to the canet's quiet work. You splash. A few drops on your face. It feels ceremonial, like some secret rite you've earned the right to perform. The courtyard is humming gently now. A hush before stories, a hush before tea. You exhale deeply, and for the first time in hours, you realize that you haven't thought once about air conditioning or fans or thermostats. You haven't needed to, because this house has already done what your modern apartment never could. It has adjusted itself to you. Dinner arrives not with fanfare, but with the rustle of fabric and the low clink of ceramic bowls. No overhead lighting snaps on, no microwave beeps, just flickering oil lanterns and the soft hush of bare feet over stone as platters are placed. In the center of the courtyard, you find a cushion near the house and settle in. This, right here, is not just a meal, it's a cooling ritual disguised as hospitality. A bowl of obdue kheer is passed to you, first a chilled cucumber, and yogurt soup dotted with crushed walnuts and herbs, sprinkled with dried rose petals that float like pink commas on the surface. It's the edible equivalent of air conditioning. You lift a spoonful and let it sit on your tongue. Cold, creamy, slightly tangy. A breath of mint rises through your nose. Around you, conversation begins, not loud, not animated, but measured like music timed to the pace of digestion and dusk. And here's your mainstream fact. Persian cuisine was intentionally designed to balance temperature. Foods were classified not just by flavor or nutrition, but by hot and cold qualities. Orgam and sard. It wasn't about physical temperature alone. A grilled kebab could be cold and a melon could be hot, but rather their effect on the body's inner balance. Eat spicy lamb, pair it with cooling herbs. Had too much yogurt, counter it with roasted nuts. It was thermal equilibrium on a plate. A man passes you a small dish of pickled garlic. 8 years, he says with a grin. You raise an eyebrow, unsure whether he means the age of the garlic or the amount of time it might take to recover from the flavor. Either way, you try it. It's sharp, mellowed by age, not heat. You feel your blood quicken a little, then settle. The air cools your skin before you can even sweat. And that's the beauty of this moment. The food and the home are working together. You glance up, toward the wind catcher still visible against the twilight. It hums faintly, drawing the cooler evening air downward. Someone opens another door to help the cross breeze. The badger doesn't complain. It simply redirects, like a conductor shifting tempo for the strings. Historians still argue whether traditional Persian meals evolved alongside architectural developments, or were shaped separately. But here, in the glowing courtyard, the answer seems obvious. They were made for each other. Eating cold yogurt soup and a white-walled sardab in August isn't just tradition, it's design logic. And now for your quirky tidbit. In some homes, desserts doubled as cooling devices. Families would prepare falafel, an icy noodle sorbet flavored with rose water and lime, then store the bowls in clay pots beside the canet vents. Served at the end of the meal, it did more than satisfy a sweet tooth. It reset the body, preparing you for a warm night under linen sheets. You're offered a tiny brass cup filled with something dark, sharbats, the ancient Persian answer to soda. Infusions of basil seed and sour cherry or tamarind and mint mixed with spring water and chilled in snow from distant mountains. If you were lucky, or ice imported from the Yakhal. If you were clever, you sip. It's sweet, tart, earthy, the kind of drink that pulls heat out from behind your ears. That makes the back of your neck sigh. The sky overhead has deepened to plum. The stars are out again, though fewer tonight. A breeze swirls through the courtyard, tugging at someone's shawl, flipping the corner of the tablecloth. You pull your own shawl closer, not out of cold, out of belonging. This courtyard open yet contained, social yet soothing has shifted temperature with you. Earlier it was harsh and bright. Now it's soft and silvered. Lantern light flickers on the house, and the ripples seem to match the cadence of voices. Everything slows. You notice that plates are being cleared quietly, without clatter. Leftover bread is wrapped in a damp cloth to keep it from drying. The herb bowl is passed around once more, now as a kind of palate cleanser. A girl offers you a sprig of tarragon. You take it, press it between your fingers. It smells like green shadows. And here's one last image for the night. A Persian home in the desert. Generations ago, long before gas stoves or refrigeration hosting. A full evening meal for 12, no sweat, no shouting, no frantic fanning. Just a system of passive cooperation. Clay, air, water, food, all moving together. Like a tide coming in. You lean back now, supported by cushions that seem to have rearranged themselves. To meet your shape, you hear a rustle above a cloth canopy, being unfurled between roof beams to shelter tonight's sleep. Someone's already placing mats along the upper ledge. The house, which called your day so patiently, is ready to cradle your night. You smile to yourself. It's not about beating the heat here. It's about knowing where it hides, and how to walk right past it with a bowl of soup, a jug of mint water, and a fan made from reeds. Night has taken over now, but not in the heavy, suffocating way it does in cities with concrete heat still radiating from the sidewalks. No, this is a Persian desert night, the kind that arrives with ceremony and precision, quietly folding the heat away like a freshly pressed shirt, tucking it into some unseen drawer until morning. You've moved to the rooftop terrace now, barefoot, careful not to stub your toes on the edge of the stairwell. The stone beneath your feet is still faintly warm, like a cat that's just stopped sunbathing. But the air is perfect. Cool without being cold. Dry without biting. You breathe in slowly, and it feels like your lungs have found their natural setting. You're not thinking about fans or thermostats, just sky and space dot all around you. Other rooftops are coming to life. You see figures spreading quilts across low platforms, arranging pillows against short mud brick walls. Lanterns flicker on ledges. Somewhere, the soft clink of a glass against a jug. Laughter. A yawn. Rooftops in Persian homes weren't decoration, they were functional. Seasonal extensions of the house. During the hottest months, families would sleep up here, under the stars, cooled by elevation and breeze. And here's your mainstream fact of the night. Rooftop sleeping wasn't just a quaint tradition. It was a widespread, centuries-old adaptation to intense summer climates across the Middle East. Entire architectural styles were built around this practice. Stairwells angled to allow rooftop access. Parapets raised just enough for privacy and even wind catcher. Channels extended upward to direct breezes straight across the rooftop beds. You lay down on a thin mattress that's been laid near the eastern wall. It smells faintly of cedar and soap. Above you, the stars are crisp, undiluted by city glow. You can see the Milky Way tonight, truly see it, and your first thought is that it looks like someone spilled crushed pearls across indigo silk. And then, that second thought, I could sleep here forever. And you might, because up here, you realize that the rooftop isn't just about escaping heat. It's about rising above it literally, metaphorically, poetically. A home with a rooftop terrace isn't just offering you air, it's offering you perspective. You turn your head and spot another rooftop across the lane. A family of facits, cross-legged around a radio, voices low. One child is half asleep already, tucked under a gauzy mosquito net. A cat prowls the ledge, tail flicking like a METRONOME dot. And now, your quirky tidbit, in some communities, rooftops became social networks. Neighbors would host tea sessions across adjacent terraces, stringing lanterns on ropes between homes. passing plates of fruit via poly baskets, or even sharing bedtime stories across the alley. Think of it as social media with stairs and figs.you. Laugh quietly. It feels like a joke too gentle to share aloud. The windcatcher still breathes behind you, its subtle exhale pushing the air gently across the roof. Someone somewhere is pouring rosewater over a small clay bowl. Set by their bed, it'll evaporate slowly through the night, releasing cool vapor and scenting the air with the faint perfume of memory. Historians still argue whether rooftop sleeping faded due to rising temperatures, security concerns, or the advent of air conditioning. Some say it's cultural shift. Others claim it's just laziness. But the rooftops, when they're used like this, they argue back with silence. You shift on your mattress and notice something embedded in the wall nearby, a ceramic vessel, half sunken into the masonry, open at the top. You lean closer and peer in. It's filled with water and a floating sprig of basil. You're not surprised. These wall pots we used to cool the air just a bit more, another layer in the great onion of climate control this house wears so beautifully. No machine hums, no ducts clank, and yet you're comfortable, better than comfortable. The air moves gently across your arms, your face. Your thoughts begin to slow. And as the city quiets, just distant murmurs now, the last spoon against the last bowl, you understand something fundamental about Persian cooling design. It wasn't about chasing comfort. It was about inviting it, courting it, preparing for it, making the right kind of space so that when it arrived, it could linger without effort. This rooftop, this final frontier of the home, was the ultimate act of hospitality toward the sky. And tonight, you're a guest here. You lie still. The stars don't move, not really. But you begin to feel them differently, as if their light is brushing against your skin. You hear one last rooftop yawn, and then, like the house below, the city exhales and sleeps. You smile and drift. Sometime in the earliest hours of morning, you stir, not fully awake, not fully asleep. The night air is still cool, maybe cooler now. A faint breeze crosses your cheek like a sigh that forgot it didn't. Need to whisper anymore? You don't. Open your eyes yet. You simply listen. There's no traffic, no air conditioning units switching on and off, just the faraway sound of a rooster, the soft tick of fabric on fabric as someone turns in their sleep across the rooftop. You could lie here forever, but eventually the light begins to shift, not abruptly, not like an alarm clock. It comes like steam creeping, warming, announcing itself without volume. You sit up slowly, the blanket falling from your shoulders. The stars have faded now, replaced by a sky just barely beginning to admit the color blue. The rooftop stirs to life. Below you, the architecture awakens. Doors open softly. Water splashes in a basin. The badger clears its throat and resumes its endless work of breathing the world in and out. You look across the neighboring rooftops and spot someone brushing their hair, another arranging fresh fruit on a plate. The daily cooling rhythm is about to begin again. This is your reminder. Persian homes didn't just prepare for heat once and call it done. Their very bones were designed for cycles, the daily swell and retreat of light and temperature, the quiet rituals of opening, closing, watering, shading. Here's your mainstream fact. In many traditional desert cities like Yazd, the entire urban layout reinforced passive cooling principles. Narrow alleys created shade throughout the day, curved streets slowed wind to manageable speeds, and dense construction meant shared walls that reduced heat exposure. The city was designed like a living system, not just a pile of houses. You stretch, now, padding carefully across the rooftop to peer down into the courtyard. A woman below is washing stone tiles with a clay bowl of water, the dampness darkening the brick in soft patches. The house reflects morning now, no longer lanterns. You can see your own face rippling there, slightly sleepy, slightly sun-kissed. And now your quirky tidbit. Some Persian households kept sun diaries, carefully noting the exact moment when each room caught its first and last light of day. Why? To time fabric hangings, reposition cushions, and even schedule daily chores for optimal coolness. Shade wasn't just comfort, it was currency. You descend the steps, the stairwell still cool from the night, As you enter the lower rooms, you feel it again, that orchestration of temperature. Not just cool walls, smart walls. Every part of this place is working in tandem, wordlessly, tirelessly. Someone hands you a cup of Sharbati second jab in a blend of vinegar, mint and cucumber. Water. It's tangy and strangely revitalizing. The kind of drink that doesn't ask permission to wake you up, it just gently does. The room you'd napped in yesterday has been reset. Mats rolled, curtains retied. A clay bowl sits in the corner with fresh water ready for evaporation. The rhythm of cooling is already underway again, not because someone commanded it, but because the house has taught its people how to live with the sun. Historians still argue whether this harmonious flow was intentional from the beginning or the result of centuries of trial and error. But the result is clear. Homes like this don't wage war on the climate, they dance with it. You sit beside the house now, bare feet trailing in the water. A pomegranate has been split open beside you, seeds glistening like little rubies. The courtyard smells faintly of stone, soap, and something herbal, basil or thyme, maybe. And suddenly, in the hush of this new morning, you realize something. The house is never finished. Not in the way modern buildings are sealed off, fixed in use, indifferent to their inhabitants. This one adapts, moment to moment. The same courtyard that hosted a meal last night now invites silence. The same breeze that cooled your evening sleep now carries the promise of heat, but gently. Gradually, without threat, you close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to hold still in this moment. The house holds still with you, because here, rest isn't a break from life, it's a part of life. Built in, designed, expected. A child laughs in the distance, and the echo of it skips across the tiles like a stone across water. The sun peaks above the wall now, just a sliver. But that's all it takes, the first note in today's heat symphony. And the house, already ready, already stretching its limbs, already turning its face to the wind. And you? You belong here now too. By mid-morning, the light has grown sharper, though the house still holds on to its calm. You notice it especially now, this measured transition, this gentle escalation. The sun tries its best, but the architecture stalls it. No panic, no sudden leaps in temperature, just a steady shift like watching ink spread across parchment. You walk once more through the house, barefoot. The floors remain cool. Your footfalls whisper. You pass an alcove where dried herbs hang from the ceiling, mint, tarragon, dill. Their scent mingles with the warm clay in a way that feels ancient and clean. Today, you pay closer attention to the surface is not just the structure, but the skin of the house. The plastered mud walls are textured, matte, porous. They breathe just like you. You run your fingers along the surface. It's slightly cool to the touch, like the memory of night lingering past its welcome. This is no accident. Here's your mainstream fact. Mud brick and plaster, the main construction materials of traditional Persian homes, are thermal regulators. They absorb heat slowly, store it during the day, and release it at night. The walls act like batteries, smoothing out temperature extremes without needing so much as a light switch. It's basic science, but it feels like magic. And now the quirky bit: some homes would infuse their plaster with ash or straw to improve insulation. In a few cases, even powdered herbs or crushed egg shells were added, supposedly to keep insects out and energy in. Whether it actually worked is still up for debate. But the ritual of care of making the house not just with the earth, but for it remains unforgettable. You find yourself back in the central corridor, the part of the house that channels movement from the courtyard to the sardab, from the kitchen to the rooftop. Here, there's a beautiful trick of temperature, open archways on both ends, aligned just so. The air glides through like it's been waiting all night for this moment. You pause, letting it wrap around your arms. You don't need science to tell you this works. Your goosebumps are doing a fine job. A man passes by carrying a clay jug. He nods toward the kitchen, a low, shady room tucked to the side of the house, often ignored in cooling conversations. But oh, how clever it is inside. The kitchen is designed not to fight the heat, but to hide from it. Thick walls, no direct sunlight. Openings placed high on the walls, allowing hot air to escape naturally. A white counter, Carved from stone, stays cool even when cooking begins. The oven called a tanner is built partly underground, minimizing heat spread. When in use, it draws heat downward, away from the body. Everything here respects the heat by containing it. Historians still argue whether this underground oven layout was primarily for baking or if its design naturally encouraged cooling innovation elsewhere in the house. Either way, the results are delicious dotters if summoned. Someone offers you a round of fresh scorched flatbread, still puffed in spots. Crisp at the edge, soft in the middle, you tear a piece. Steam rising from it like a whisper of yesterday's sun. It's served with cold cheese, walnuts, and fresh basil, yet another deliberate temperature contrast. You take your plate and return to the shaded corridor, where small marble inlays reflect slivers of light back up at the ceiling. It's subtle, barely perceptible, but it lifts the room visually, even as the temperature remains grounded. A reminder that cooling isn't just about air. It's about light, too, about the way it moves, about how much of it you let in, and when. Another quiet moment, another clever choice. Now here's something most visitors miss. Tucked inside a wall alcove is a small mirror. Not decorative, but practical. At certain times of day, it reflects sunlight from one part of the house into another, brightening without heating. The same principle as modern-day fiber optic sunlight systems, except this version is handcrafted, framed in wood and utterly charming. You lean against the cool stone bench under the mirror and close your eyes. You begin to understand something deep, something true. Comfort isn't added to these homes. It is grown into them. It's not a layer. It's a seed that was planted with the first brick, the first handful of clay, the first wind measured by hand and memory. In a modern house, you switch the thermostat to 72 and hope. In this house, you follow. You move with it, rise and rest with it, open and close with it. There's no war against heat here, no fear of it, only a pact, a mutual understanding between walls and weather. And it's then, in that stillness, that you realize this home has been telling you a story all along. Not a flashy one, not full of plot twists or dramatic reveals, but one of quiet genius, of generational knowing, of materials that remember. A house that doesn't merely shelter you from heat, but teaches you how to be with it. You smile, because tomorrow the rhythm will begin again. The sunlight will return, just as hot. But you'll know which cushion to move, which door to crack, which cloth to soak. You'll know how to listen to the house, the greatest teacher you never knew you needed. By now, you've stopped checking the time. You don't even know what day it is, and you don't care, because the rhythm of this house has replaced clocks with shadows, hours with airflow, schedules with the slow bloom of knowing. This is the deep comfort that creeps in when architecture and atmosphere hold hands. You're in the courtyard again, the same one where you watched the lanterns shimmer on the house, where you cooled your fingertips in the water, where voices rose and fell like waves. But now, something's shifted. You're not visiting the house anymore. You've become part of its memory. It's quiet this afternoon, not nap quiet, but listening quiet. A silence that feels full, not empty. Somewhere, beyond the walls, you hear a merchant calling out his wares in the street. A donkey brays once, then stillness again. You run your palm along the plaster wall, and it's slightly warm now. Not hot, proof that the thermal mass has done its work. The heat hasn't invaded the room. The walls have absorbed it, diluted it, turned it into something passive. A background hum. Here's your mainstream fact. Thermal mass is one of the oldest and most effective cooling strategies known to architecture. By using materials like stone, mud brick, or packed earth, ancient builders could regulate indoor temperatures with astonishing accuracy. These materials absorbed heat slowly, held it, and released it only when the surrounding air began to cool. Think of it as a climate sponge. You wander back toward the Windcatcher Tower. Its base is still as quiet as ever. No creaking, no fans, just air, rising and falling like it always has, nudged gently by geometry. You pause beneath it and look up. The badger is like a giant here, always listening to the sky, the wind, the sun. You whisper to yourself, wondering how many millions of breaths this thing has guided down into homes, onto faces, across beds. And here's your quirky fact. In some households, people assigned personalities to their badgers. They gave them names: the tall one, the stubborn one, the lazy twin. Some families swore one vent cooled better than the others, depending on mood, season, or even family disputes. Superstition, maybe. Or maybe just affection for something that watched over them through every heat wave. You step into a small side room now, dark, cool, silent. No furniture, just a rolled carpet, a clay jug in the corner, and a carved wooden box. The walls curve softly inward, built to hug the air rather than fight it. You sit, close your eyes, and the house begins to speak again. Not in words, of course, but in sensation. The way the air brushes your temple, the way light folds itself politely at the edge of the curtain, the way your skin doesn't need to adjust because the temperature already knows what's best for you. Historians still argue whether this level of harmony was a conscious design strategy or a side effect of material limitations, but anyone who's ever sat in a room like this knows it. Doesn't matter, intentional or not, the effect is transcendent. And then there's this. No one ever calls these homes luxurious, but they are. Not in the way of marble countertops or infinity pools, but in the pure, irreplaceable luxury of belonging to a place that understands your body, your needs, your discomforts, your seasons. The wind moves again, not strong, just enough to lift the edge of your sleeve, to remind you it's still watching, still tending, still protecting. And you remember the Yakul, the ice pits buried deep beneath the earth, built to store winter's frost through the fiercest summer. You haven't visited one yet, but you feel it somewhere beneath your feet. That cold darkness, waiting in silence, patiently offering a cooling promise that spans months. A building built for time, not in spite of it. You lean back against the wall, and for a moment, you imagine what it would be like if every building was made like this. If cities were shaped not by profit or fashion, but by air. If homes whispered comfort instead of buzzing it. If we measured success not by how quickly we can overpower nature, but by how quietly we can live alongside it. A bell sounds somewhere, a light, musical clang, maybe from a bicycle vendor or a mosque preparing for evening prayer. And the air changes again. It's cooling once more. You're not surprised. The house knew this before you did. You rise slowly, stretching limbs that feel cared for, not just rested. And as you step back into the courtyard, the house greets you again. The water reflects the archways now and your own face among them. You kneel, dip your fingers in, and laugh softly, because somehow, without asking, this house has taught you something profound. Heat is not the enemy. Discomfort is not the enemy. Disconnection is. And here, you've been connected all along. The days lengthen. Light returns slowly, first as pale suggestions across the snow, then as full-blown golden defiance. You watch as the shadows shrink, the windows brighten, and the croft fills with the creaks and sighs of thawing wood. But not all shadows leave when the light returns. Some simply wait for longer nights. The barley sprouts, green, hopeful shoots clawing their way through frost-hardened soil. You and the daughter check them each morning like nervous parents. She names them after constellations. You name yours definitely not haunted. It's spring, but only technically. One evening you see something on the ridge, a line of shapes, far in the distance, walking slowly across the horizon. They aren't sheep, they're too tall, too still, but they follow the same trail, the one your flock vanished into. You don't mention it. No one would ask, what did you see? They'd ask how many. You lose count at 8. That night, the wind sings again, not whistling through cracks, but humming, like someone breathing into a bottle. You hear it as you drift into sleep, and somewhere in your dream, the hill opens like a mouth, and the flock walks out, all of them, but none of them look at you. You wake with your hand in your pocket, fingers wrapped around the tooth. You never remember putting it there. That morning, the compost pit is opened, the boards shoved aside. Inside, the ashes are gone. In their place, a single stone, smoothed by time and shaped deliberately into a Small spiral. The daughter finds you staring at it. She doesn't speak, just presses a wool pouch into your hand and walks away. Inside the pouch, salt, a needle, a sliver of bone carved with one letter you don't recognize. You carry it with you after that. Not out of fear, out of respect, out of memory. The bone sheep remain quiet. No new ones appear, but every so often you find one that's changed, turned slightly, tilting its head, like it's trying to listen better, or waiting for something familiar to return. Historians still argue whether any of this actually happened, whether the sheep were ever haunted, whether the people ever truly believed or just performed belief to make peace with the dark. Some say Iceland's stories are just winter, made personal. Others say that memory has a body, and sometimes it wants to graze. You help with the planting. You mend the fence. You sit with the uncle as he teaches the dog to bark at shadows, not to chase them, just to keep them honest. And at night, you sleep with one eye open, not because you're afraid anymore, because something out there remembers you. And in this land of forgotten flocks and whispering fields, the only thing more dangerous than forgetting is being remembered too well. It's strange how quickly fear becomes routine. You wake, you check under the bed, you count the bone sheep, still just one, unmoving, tucked on the hearth like a guilty heirloom. You sip your tea, watching the frost climb the window, and wonder if the frost is watching back. You no longer ask questions like, "What was that noise?" or "Why does the dog refuse to look at the rug?" You ask, "How loud was it? How fast is it moving this time?" Progress. Your host has started referring to the fold as the empty, not the pasture, not the field, just the empty, like it's a room that has not yet filled or has and emptied itself again. The daughter suggests planting something in it. They wouldn't mind, she says. You will plant barley together that afternoon. It feels more ceremonial than agricultural. That night, the wind comes back, not hard, not hostile, just present, whispering through the slats, stirring ash in the hearth, plucking gently at the corners of your blanket. You hold still and listen, then, faintly, from the distance, ableat. Soft. Lonely. And wrong. The daughter opens one eye from across the room. That's not ours, she says, simply. You don't reply. You don't need to. In the morning, there's a new carving on the table. Not hers, a sheep. As usual, but twisted, its head upside down, its legs bent inward, its wool carved with tiny circles. No one claims it. The dog won't go near it. You put it in the compost pit with gloved hands. 3 more appear that week. You burn them all, quietly. In pieces. That Sunday, the matron finds tufts of grey fleece inside the flour bin. They smell like moss and salt. The uncle quietly nails a set of horse teeth above the door. When you ask why, he says, to confuse them. Confuse who, you ask? The ones that forgot they're gone. He says, you stop asking after that. The croft falls into a rhythm again, but now the rhythm includes watching the corners, listening for slow breathing where there should be none, rearranging the furniture so no chairs. Face the door after dark. The kinder not has passed, but something stayed. Not violent, not loud. Just left over. Like scent on a scarf, like breath in a bottle. You dream of sheep again. Only now, you're one of them. You walk in line. You graze. You stare with glassy eyes at a croft you used to know, watching yourself through the window as someone else wears your blanket. Historians still argue whether Icelandic dreams carried prophetic weight or were simply vessels for accumulated stress. They debate the symbolism of hooves in the psyche, of wool as a metaphor for memory. They quote Freud, Jung, and sagas in equal measure, but they never woke up bleating. You do. Just once. You never tell anyone. The daughter gives you a new carving the next day, a bird. But this time, its wings are folded around something small, a sheep, sleeping. Inside it. You keep it under your pillow, just in case you forget which you are. You'd think the quiet would bring relief, but it doesn't. The fold stands empty, gate swinging gently in the wind, and the croft itself feels hollow, not haunted, not anymore. just echoing, like someone sang here once and then left without finishing the song. No one mentions replacing the sheep. Your host sharpens tools that don't need sharpening. The daughter carves abstract shapes, now nothing with eyes, nothing with hooves. The uncle has taken to sitting outside on a stool, staring at the horizon like it owes him something. You don't ask what anyone is thinking. You don't need to. Everyone is waiting for something to not happen. That evening, a stranger arrives. He's young, bundled in wool and ambition, face red from the cold. Says he's from a croft across the valley. Heard about the cleansing. Wants to know if it worked. If it's safe to return to the old pasture up by the Black Ridge. Your host doesn't answer immediately. Just pours the man a cup of sour milk and nods toward the hearth. You watch them talk quietly for a while. The visitor leans in, eager, scribbling in a notebook. Your host leans back, not smiling. Eventually, the man asks if he can stay the night. Just in case something walks, he says, laughing nervously. They let him, but no one laughs back. That night, you share the main room again. The man keeps talking. Even as the candles burn low, he says there are new theories, folk structures built around climate, not spirits, that the old stories were ways to measure weather patterns, that the skagave might have been hallucinations caused by mold or isolation. You nod politely, but you're watching the window, because there's fog rolling in again, thick, low. Too fast. It presses against the glass like breath. You all fall silent at the same time. Then, scratching. Not at the door. Underneath. The floor creaks. The uncle stands and presses a hand to the wall. He doesn't look surprised. The daughter pulls a rune-carved plank from under her mattress, places it across the threshold. You reach into your coat and touch the carved bird splinters, still tucked in the lining. The visitor looks pale. What is that? He whispers. You say, it's nothing if we're lucky. He doesn't sleep. Neither do you. In the morning, the fog is gone. The visitor is gone to. Not just from the croft. Gone. No note. No tracks. No mug. The only sign he was ever there. His notebook, lying open on the floor, last line half written. A second flock emerges from the you burn it. The others don't object. Historians still argue whether stories like this, the ones with vanishing outsiders and unfinished sentences, were designed to keep locals in and strangers out. Whether the tale is the warning or the consequence. Whether belief itself is the invitation. But you don't care what they argue. You just start watching the hills more closely again. You're not sure when the idea first occurred to you, maybe somewhere between the yogurt soup and the basil-scented rooftop, but now it's a certainty you're going to miss this place. Not just the house itself, but the way it moves slowly, softly, purposefully. You've grown used to its rhythms, to waking up cool, even when the desert outside swelters, to the quiet teamwork between clay and water and wind, to the knowledge that, whatever the sun is doing, this house has already anticipated it, shrugged and adjusted a curtain. And now, as the sun once again sinks toward the mountains, you find yourself walking the halls one last time, not out of obligation, but because you want to say goodbye properly. The windcatcher glows peach in the fading light. Its high windows catch the last breeze of the evening, coaxing it downward in long, even breaths. You pause in its shadow, feeling the air wash over you, not a blast, not a gust, just a cool exhale. Like the house letting go of the day, you step into the sardab again, down familiar steps, into the belly of stillness. The walls down here feel even thicker now, as though they're tired from holding back the heat all afternoon. The air is hushed, scented faintly with cold clay and water. You run your fingers along the rim of the stone basin. A single droplet falls. The house blinks. Here's your mainstream fact. The efficiency of these passive systems often rivaled, or even surpassed, early mechanical air conditioning in the hottest parts of Iran. Before electricity, indoor temperatures could remain 10-15 C cooler than outside, not with machines but with planning, with patience, with partnership between people and place. You wander back to the courtyard where someone has lit a lantern beside the house. The water reflects its flicker in perfect stillness, the surface, barely disturbed. You kneel down beside it, the same way you did on your first night. You place your hand on the edge of the basin. It's cool, of course it is. And now for your final quirky tidbit. Some ancient Persian homes were built with hollow clay cones, embedded in the walls, not visible, not decorative, but functional. These sound traps muffled noise from room to room and cooled air by channeling it through spiral chambers, creating miniature wind tunnels. They were called gavams, and some homeowners believed they carried good fortune if the wind made a soft sound as it passed. If it sang. You wonder if yours has been singing this whole time and you were just finally quiet enough to hear it. Historians still debate whether this level of sustainable cooling was driven more by climate necessity, or philosophical intent. Was it function first or harmony? But standing here now, you realize that distinction no longer matters, because this house, this ancient, thoughtful, sun-softened house has shown you what it means to be in tune with seasons, with space, with yourself. You move now through the last few rooms, each one kissed by the final threads of daylight, the mashrabia window, the low archways, the rooftop stairs you climbed with sleepy limbs. Every part of the house feels satisfied, as though it has completed a daily ritual and now rests with you. You hear the soft clatter of plates in the distance, the rustle of someone spreading beds on the terrace, a child's giggle carried down from above. The home is shifting into night, as it always does. And now, finally, your steps return to the front threshold. You stand there for a long moment, not to linger, not to stall, but to remember. The temperature is perfect, because of course it is. This house has been cooling itself long before you arrived. It will go on cooling long after. And even if you never return, you'll carry it with you, not in photographs or architectural plans, but in your understanding of comfort, in the way you open a window, the way you angle your fan, the way you pause before flipping a switch and wonder, what would the wind do here if I let it? You smile, then you step outside. And now the story is over. But the house is still with you. Let your mind return then now back to those quiet courtyards, those whispering arches, that ever-listening wind catcher rising above the rooftops. Picture the lantern light dancing on the water's surface. Hear the soft tick of reed fans. Feel the smoothness of the cool floor beneath your feet as you stretch out, long and warm and weightless. Let each breath become slower. Let your limbs grow heavier. The air around you, even now, feels cooler somehow, softened by memory, wrapped in mudbrick and stillness. The rhythms of the house move within you. Its wisdom lingers, not loud, not urgent, just present, just enough. Your thoughts, if they stir, do so gently, like the breeze that drifted over rooftop mattresses, like the sound of distant footsteps in a tiled hall. Let them pass. Let them fade. You are safe, you are home, and nothing more is needed. Not right now. Just stillness, just rest. Let the walls hold you. Let the wind cradle you. Let the coolness settle deep in your chest like a lullaby made of clay and stars. Sleep now. Sleep.